The year is 2016. A startup company on the West Coast is about to make waves, becoming the first owners of a sports team where fans will control almost every aspect of creation. From logos, colors, mascot, players being signed and cut, coaches being hired and fired, the fans, in theory, are the general manager. True democracy through the means of a website and an app on a cell phone will dictate what stays and what goes. For some people, this is innovative, fresh, new, exciting. For others, this is nothing but a farce. A joke not to be taken seriously, as this is not how professional sports teams have ever been run before. This is the history of the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles. Staying in 2016, the startup company, known as Project Franchise, is granted an expansion team in the Indoor Football League, with the idea of being the first ever team to have fans vote on everything that goes into it. To start, Franchise will need a location for their team to play, and cities are already being voted on for the newest, quote, video game, yet real-life team. As votes trickle in from multiple cities ranging from Independence, Missouri, Boise, Idaho, Austin, Texas, and others, two locations seem to stand out above the rest: Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, and Salt Lake City, Utah. In the end, Salt Lake gets the nod, and the Maverick Center is the newest arena and location for the Indoor Football League. Salt Lake is no stranger to indoor or arena football. The Utah Blaze were an expansion franchise themselves in 2006 when they joined the Arena Football League along with the Kansas City Brigade. Both teams would last until the AFL as a whole declared bankruptcy in 2008. In 2009, the Utah Valley Thunder would be the newest indoor team in the region, this time playing in the American Indoor Football Association. And in 2010, the Thunder would gain the assets of the original Utah Blaze and rebrand, coming back with the Arena Football League's revival. The team would last until 2013 when the Blaze did not submit paperwork committing to the future seasons in the Arena Football League and were eventually removed from the league following the conclusion of the season. So this takes us forward to 2017 with a new Indoor Football League season on the horizon. We, unfortunately, have to say goodbye to two teams from the previous year. The Billings Wolves and the Tri-Cities Fever will fold, making room for two new teams to take their place. You have your David, the plucky underdog Salt Lake team being built from the ground up. On the other end is Goliath. The five-time champion Arizona Rattlers are joining from the Arena Football League themselves. Two teams on polar opposite ends of success, ready to compete against the best the IFL has to offer. But before every team heads into battle to claim that 2017 championship, Salt Lake has quite a bit of voting to do from their general manager population. As voting gets underway, the hope of common sense prevailing is needed to fight away trolls and bad intentions. Red, white, and blue will be the color scheme for the team. The nickname, Screaming Eagles, is chosen from a list that includes other monikers like Sand Troopers, Stormin' Mormons, and Teamy McTeamface. The mascot, a giant eagle, of course, is named Talon from the fans. Finally, we get to the vote for the head coach. 5 choices and only one can be the man to lead the Screaming Eagles into the gridiron. Congratulations to William McCarthy. You have been voted as the first ever head coach of the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles. Voting, though, doesn't end there either. You, the fan, on your couch, bed, workplace, or wherever, get to determine who plays for the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles. Coach McCarthy will take the 40-man training camp roster and trim it down to 32 players. Fans will determine the fate of 7 players for the final roster cuts to 25. The fate of a few players in Utah, trying to get game film to see if they will have the opportunity to play indoors, outdoors, or even that small percentage to ever make the NFL, rests on the fingertips of random people in different states and even different countries. Players will have videos equivalent to almost a plea to ask the fans to keep them on the roster, and even vote to make them the starter at their position. The roster, decided by the fans, will eventually be trimmed down to 25 players. As the beginning of the 2017 season approaches, Salt Lake are somewhat of a prom queen in the IFL. Media outlets discussing the team and the unique way that they are going to have fans call the offensive plays attracts the attention of other sports outlets like Sports Illustrated, Twitch, Wall Street Journal, and plenty other outlets trying to get their way in to see what Salt Lake is all about. The IFL too must like the publicity that's going on here with their newest franchise, as the hope to gain new sponsorship deals is always at the forefront of any emerging sports league. February 16th, 2017. Game 1. The Nebraska Danger enters Salt Lake City to a crowd of over 8,000 fans. The hope is all 8,000 plus have a charge on their cell phone, and the quasi-offensive coordinators are in for 60 minutes of indoor football league action. However, nothing good ever happens on stadium Wi-Fi. You know it, and I know it. Fans and coaches alike can't connect to the internet and load the plays on their phones or their tablets. Coach McCarthy brings in Verlin Reed and relays the plays as he jogs to the huddle. The ball is snapped, Reed drops back and fumbles in the end zone. Nebraska recovers and it's a quick 7-0 lead. Before the internet connection is restored, Nebraska jumps out to a 14-0 lead. On the next Screaming Eagles drive, however, the fans do take charge. Plays are relayed from the app to the coach, from the coach to the quarterback, from the quarterback to the huddle. And it's capped off with a Verlin Reed hitting Derwin Lauderdale in the end zone for Salt Lake's first touchdown in franchise history. The fans, being the ones who called the play, rushed the field in excitement. The first touchdown called by the fans. Once the fans return to their seats, the other 3 quarters are played, and Nebraska ends up destroying Salt Lake 78-47. As an expansion franchise, winning is tough in any league. Getting players from scratch and building something from nothing, it takes a while to get off the ground. Salt Lake fans wouldn't have to wait long, though, to see their team achieve their first win in franchise history. It'd only take another week and a trip to Colorado for it to happen. The Colorado Crush, funny enough, were also owned by Project Franchise, as the previous ownership were forced to sell the team due to health issues from last season. Franchise, though, would not have enough time to implement the voting system with the Crush, so everything about the team was that of your typically run sports organization. Colorado even hired Jose Jefferson as head coach, one of the 5 candidates that was in the running for Salt Lake. The Crush would eventually miss a potential game-winning field goal as time expired, sending the game into overtime. Colorado would open the scoring in overtime, but Salt Lake wouldn't get their large contingent of play-calling staff, and they would answer back with a score of their own. With the offense going for 2 points and the win, the fans would determine if their team came away victorious. And they do. 42-41, Salt Lake has their first win in franchise history. The fans have gotten it done. 3 days after the team's first win, the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles are on to their second head coach. William McCarthy is relieved of his duties, as rumors have run rampant that he isn't calling the plays that the fans are voting on and pretty much going rogue with it. Whether this is true or not, he won't be the play caller moving forward. The search for a new head coach begins during their bye week. 6 days after the firing of their first head coach, Salt Lake brings in Matt Sock to man the helm. A former arena football quarterback, offensive coordinator, and head coach, Sock is brought in to see Salt Lake to their winning ways. Unfortunately, the winning ways would have to wait a little bit, as the Screaming Eagles would drop back-to-back games against the Spokane Empire, dropping their record to just 1-3. Heading into Week 6's matchup against their fellow franchise, the Colorado Crush, the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles are leaving it up to their fans on whether or not to sign a former NFL player to beef up their defense. Greg Hardy is a former defensive lineman that is trying to rejuvenate his career. From the Carolina Panthers to the Dallas Cowboys, Hardy was a force on the defensive line, accumulating over 200 tackles, 40 sacks, and 8 forced fumbles. So why would Greg Hardy need to jumpstart his career that he's already accomplished so much in the NFL down here in the indoor leagues? Well, because Greg Hardy is not really that good of a person. In 2014, Hardy was arrested for assault and threatening his ex-girlfriend while throwing her around and saying things that you can't really repeat here on YouTube. Only plays 1 game for 2014 in Carolina, Greg Hardy would be deactivated and eventually signed by the Dallas Cowboys in 2015, facing the suspension. Hardy was suspended for 10 games after that by NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell from an internal investigation until an arbiter ultimately lowered it to just 4 games. Salt Lake split the vote 50-50 and ultimately passed on signing Hardy. Colorado would go on to win Week 6's matchup 52-49. Dropping 2 more games to go 1-6 at about the halfway point in the season, Salt Lake is on the brink of missing the playoffs. And even though bad press surrounding the team, things needing to change in a hurry, Week 10 seems like a good chance to exact revenge on the Nebraska Danger and turn their season around. April 20th, 2017. The Wall Street Journal reports that Project Franchise has told the IFL they're creating a new football league, the Interactive Football League, and they're taking Salt Lake and Colorado with them after finishing up the 2017 season. This now makes Salt Lake and Colorado lame ducks for the rest of the year. No matter what happens past this point, these two teams are gone, unless someone ponies up the money to buy them and keep them in the league. For the players on these teams, it becomes ever more important to put out the best game film you can for scouts and other coaches. For the coaches, it becomes ever more important to do the best job that you can and work your connections to get hired on somewhere after this, whether it be indoors or outdoors. Whether it's with interactive football or beyond, you got to work those connections. Nebraska, a few days later, would beat Salt Lake by the score 49-30, making the Screaming Eagles 1-7. After the announcement both Salt Lake and Colorado were leaving, the Screaming Eagles would kind of turn their season around. With no chance at the playoffs, Salt Lake would finish their final 8 games a 4-4 record, even 500, and end the season 5-11. With those 11 losses, Salt Lake had opportunities to earn some victories, but things just wouldn't break their way in the end. Of their 5 wins, 3 of them would come against Colorado, and Salt Lake did win 3 games at home for their fans to see as well, including the season-ending game against the Spokane Empire, 45-42, the final game of Salt Lake's Screaming Eagles history. While the 2017 season is marred by different news stories and publications, controversies, and anything else sandwiched in between, be it good or bad, Salt Lake were able to gather quite a bit of accolades on the football field. Player of the Week honors for Verlin Reed in Week 2 offensively, James Calhoun in Week 11 and Week 15 defensively, and finally kick returner Chris Robinson in Week 14 on the special teams. Salt Lake would also earn yearly honors, with Verlin Reed taking home the 2017 Offensive Rookie of the Year, as well as wide receiver Devin Mahina making second-team All-Indoor Football honors, and James Calhoun making first-team All-Indoor honors. Following the conclusion of the 2017 season, Salt Lake and Colorado would never play another down in any league. The team Salt Lake came into the IFL with, though, the Arizona Rattlers, would go on to win the championship in their very first year, while Salt Lake would cease to exist. Project Franchise turned into fan-controlled football, and the IFL would see membership dwindle to just 6 teams for 2018. Salt Lake City to this day has not had a team since, and it wouldn't be until 2024 that Colorado would finally get another crack at indoor football with the Colorado Spartans of the National Arena League, but that's a video for another time. Lessons good and bad can be taken away from the Project Franchise experiment. Overall, the fans calling the shots for almost everything worked, but also didn't. A team needs structure, organization, and a path to follow if they want to achieve any certain level of success. And money. Can't forget money. Teams need a lot of money to go to. For Salt Lake, having everything be put to a vote pulled people in multiple directions from multiple places around the world. Franchise knew this was only going to be an experiment in the IFL if the league didn't want to switch their entire business model over to be more fan-controlled. Once Franchise was able to secure their own league with enough capital, they were gone, burning 2 markets in their wake. They didn't care about the IFL, tucking tail halfway through the season for their own personal gain. However, the IFL would use this as a learning experience themselves. First off, better vetting methods for potential new owners would eventually crop up in the years to follow, leading to better established teams throughout the country from different indoor leagues or expansion ventures. Tapping into Salt Lake as a market, just like with any new market you venture into, exposes a new fan base to something they can latch onto and root for. For a small niche of fans, the Blaze, and to a lesser extent the Screaming Eagles, are adored and wanted back to fill arena dates to watch this silly sport. The IFL would also put every game from 2017 onwards on YouTube for people to watch. Even today, you can go through their channel and pick a random game from 2019 if you're so inclined. The IFL would also show a game of the week on Stadium, simulcast games on Caffeine TV later on, and even put their championship game on CBS Sports Network. Salt Lake, while not solely responsible for all of this, put the viewership from 2017 forward definitely shows that there's a rapid fan base for the IFL and their specific teams to watch these games. The Salt Lake Screaming Eagles weren't perfect. Far from it, actually. But with Project Franchise using them as the litmus test in the Indoor Football League for what fans want or don't want for their team or teams, does go to show you that occasionally the fan might just know a little bit about what they want for their team or even their league. The Salt Lake Screaming Eagles were never given a fair shot, in my opinion, to succeed in the IFL. Players and coaches would move on to other teams or work in non-sports related job fields. The fans would move on to the Utah Jazz, the Utah Grizzlies, and even the brand new Utah Hockey Club this year after Arizona relocated. Or maybe they latched onto a different indoor football team or a different arena team, who's to say. But for the select few who were lucky enough to attend a Utah Blaze game, or a Utah Valley Thunder, or even those 8 dates for the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles, you truly got a sense of wonder about this stupid, silly little sport we call indoor football. For the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles and the true fans of that team that live there in Utah, or even the ones all around the world, the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles are gone, but not forgotten.